Today, the Living with Wildlife Illinois team is hosting a question and answer session about how to stay safe on the Illinois roadways during the upcoming deer rut. I'm Laura Kamen.
And I'm Kathy Andrews Wright. Today we're joined by Peter Schlichting with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Division of Wildlife Resources. Peter, could you give us some background information on yourself and what your job with the DNR entails?
Hi, I'm Kathy and Laura. Thanks for having me. I am the Deer Project Manager at Department of Natural Resources. My job has a lot of different facets, but it mostly involves the statewide management of white-tailed deer. In conjunction with other members of our Forest Wildlife Program and the Disease Program, I manage the harvest information, help set permit quotas, work to manage CWD where we have it, and I monitor trends in our harvest and our population metrics within the state.
Thanks, Peter. So as we go into fall, it's important for drivers to be aware that they might see increased deer traffic on the roadways. And so why do we see more deer on the road during this time of year?
Yeah, so the rut is the breeding season for deer. And so during the rut, deer go through a lot of behavioral and physiological changes that happen during this year as they get ready for mating. And so these changes are triggered by changes in photoperiod, and that's the amount of light that's within each day. So as our days get shorter, once we pass midsummer, that triggers the pineal gland. And the pineal gland starts a cascade of hormonal changes that make females able to breed. And it also causes the changes you see in our bucks when they get larger necks. They start to develop antlers further, and then they shed the velvet off of their antlers. That's all caused by changes within deer during this season. And so the culmination of all those changes is this period we call rut. And because rut is based on photoperiod, it doesn't really change much year to year. So our photoperiod change is very cyclical and very predictable. And so our peak rut is around November 10th to 14th. And that varies a little bit throughout the state, but generally it's going to be focused around that season. And rut lasts about 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, deer are just a lot more active. This is a picture of deer vehicle accidents. And you can say that we have deer vehicle accidents throughout the year, but there's a big spike in that middle of November period. Males are much more active. Males use what's called a tender strategy, where they find a doe that's receptive and stay with her for a few days. They breed, and then he moves on. So he's constantly moving around his area and out of his normal area looking for does. And that's why we have this big jump in movement and then in our deer vehicle accidents during the rut.
Thank you for that background information, Peter. Now that we know a little bit more about the biology of the white-tailed deer, let's move into exploring some of the precautions that people can take when they're on the road in order to be safe during the rut.
There are a couple quite easy things that you can do to reduce the likelihood that you're going to be in a deer vehicle accident. The first is pay attention to deer crossing signs. They're there for a reason. They're put in place in areas that we expect there to be a lot of deer traffic, or we know that there's been deer traffic because we've had other deer vehicle accidents. Another big thing is to observe the speed limit. Give yourself more time in case a deer does come out into the road. A lot of accidents occur at high rates of speed, whether it's speeding or not, but the faster you're going, the less likely you're going to be able to stop. Another big thing with that is to leave space between you and the driver in front of you. If they do slam on their brakes, it might not be a deer vehicle accident, but a lot of times people slam on their brakes because deer are in the road, and then they get rear-ended because people are too close. Just be really mindful when you're driving in areas, especially in wooded areas. Pay attention to the road. Don't be looking at your phone. Things like deer whistles, other sort of things that are supposedly deter deer. They're not foolproof, and I have my doubts that they work very well at all. So just be hyper aware during this season that deer might be on the road, especially in wooded areas. Dawn and dusk are going to be the times where deer are most likely to be active. So be, again, more vigilant during those periods. Midday, you're very unlikely to hit a deer. But in the hour before and the hour after sunset and the hour before and hour after sunrise are when most of our accidents occur. So that's the time period to be more aware. And as I mentioned before, our peak rut is in the mid-November. And so for the few weeks before that and the few weeks after that is when the majority of our DVA accidents happen. Breeding does occur all the way into December, but the periods that you're most likely to have this rut behavior is in that month surrounding mid-November. And the big thing to remember is that deer do travel in herds. So if you see a deer, there might be more. And so that's something to be really aware of. And that's kind of the most basic things you can do. And really it comes to being aware, being especially aware of what you're doing, where other cars are, where you're most likely to see deer, and when you're most likely to see deer.
Thanks, Peter. So even if people are paying attention, unfortunately, sometimes collisions are inevitable. So what would you recommend drivers do to prepare for such a situation?
So sometimes accidents are unavoidable. There are a few things you can do if you see deer or you know deer are likely to be in an area, and that's to use your brights, give yourself a little more vision. So make sure you're using your brights and use them safely. Don't use them when people are driving towards you. Use your horn if you see animals on the side of the road. Make them aware of your presence or try to scare them away by using your horn. Give them a little more incentive to leave that area. Wear your seatbelt. I mean, that's sort of a common thing we should all be doing. But if you are going to be in an accident, and as someone, I have personally hit 3 deer myself, and so it happens. And make sure you're wearing your seatbelt. Give yourself the best chance of getting out of there unscathed. And the last thing is stay in control of your vehicle. There's that phrase, don't veer for deer. You are more likely to cause greater damage if you veer to not hit a deer than if you just hit it. You might lose the front panel of your car, but you're not likely to hit a tree, which are going to do a lot more damage. So stay in control of your vehicle, be vigilant, and wear your seatbelt.
Good advice. So on a related note, I understand that it's possible to claim roadkill deer. Could you explain that process a little bit for our viewers, and where can they learn more?
Sure. If you do hit a deer, pull off to the side of the road, turn on your hazard lights, call 911 to report that you hit a deer. That's sort of the first step. Do not exit the vehicle to check on the deer, especially on a busy road. We don't want anyone getting hit. If you do hit a deer and you would like to keep that deer, you can claim it by filling out an accident report and then filling out a form. It's on the DNR website, on the hunting pages, and claim a roadkill. There's a file you can go in, fill out all your information, and then you will be able to claim that deer. And I believe that address is also on the Whitetail Deer Illinois page. So it's really easy. If you hit it, you can claim it. And so we encourage you to use it rather than have that meat go to waste.
Okay, Peter, that's all the questions that we have for you. Are there any other last minute tips you have to give to all of the people traveling around the state in the next month or two?
No, there really aren't any tips. It's a lot of common sense things and just being aware that deer are going to be active during our dawn and dusk periods. In the middle of November and a few weeks on either side of that is when they're most likely to be active. And be vigilant, be safe, don't veer for deer. And there aren't any tricks. It's just some pretty simple things to remember as you're traveling during this fall.
Thanks, Peter. That wraps it up for today's Q&A on staying safe during the deer rut. If you have any questions, you can submit those to Wildlife Illinois. And then until next time, we'll be seeing you.